Hello YouTube, this is DJ Zogage Trains. I've got a very interesting engine to show you here today. This is something that is kind of rare in O-Gauge. This is the Sunset Models third rail Q1 duplex steam engine, or as the maintenance guys at the Crestline engine facility that actually worked on this thing, they called it the Queer One. So the reason why they nicknamed it the Queer One is because this engine had a lot of problems. This was definitely a lemon among steam engines, and one of the biggest reasons for that was the backwards facing cylinder here that rested right under the firebox. Because the cylinder had to go there, the engine had a much smaller firebox than a steam engine of this size would require, and that did not help the engine function very well. This was part of the Pennsylvania Railroad's fleet of duplex steam engines, and the idea behind the duplex was to get a really big, really fast steam engine that could pull a lot of freight or passenger and do the work of 2 or 3 steam engines. And the idea was to not use the Mallet type articulated steam engine, which could only get up to about 20 to 30 miles an hour in most cases, but the idea was to be able to come up with a new design that was much faster and much more reliable. And most of those experiments were total flops. Before this engine was created, the Pennsylvania Railroad came up with the S1, stylized by Raymond Loewy, and also the T1, and both of those engines had a multitude of issues. The T1 probably could have been corrected if the diesel era didn't sneak up on it, and this was the first of 2 freight duplexes that they came up with, and they borrowed the idea of the backward-facing cylinder from the B&O. Baltimore and Ohio had a 4444 duplex steam engine as well, called an N1, but they used the same design, having a backwards-facing rear cylinder, and they had the same problems that the Pennsy had with this one. So I don't know why you'd revive a flawed design, but the Pennsylvania chose to do that, and as a result, this steam engine spent most of its life in the roundhouse, and it hardly ever came out. When it did run, they used it in Ohio. Would run in the Sandusky area, Crestline, or Columbus. Those are the 3 main places it would run, and it didn't run that often at all. So here, this model is Sunset Models third rail's unstreamlined version. They did 2 versions. The first version was streamlined, and all of this really cool piping and detail here was covered up by the streamlined castings. I really like the unstreamlined version better. It's also harder to find. I got really lucky to find this, and I'm really happy to have it. So it's got a Hooter style whistle, and it's got a generic sound set. Sounds a lot like an Allegheny, but I'm going to change that sound set out eventually. And the cool thing about the top of this engine is, in real life, they kept the streamlining on the top of the engine. So you have a partially streamlined steamer here, where the top still has the Skyline castings, which is really cool. And you've still got that streamlined cab with the window that faces out rather than forward. And then on the bottom, you have all of this really cool detail. So this is really a neat hybrid steam engine here. It's really just, it's its own entity. It's its own piece of work here, and it's really cool. There used to be a nose cone on the front here, and that was replaced by the classic Keystone boiler front. And then you've got this streamlined cowcatcher there. So this engine, before I turn it on, I just want to let you know this engine works about as well as the real-life Q1 worked. It has a speed control issue, and the issue gets worse each time I run it. So the sensor needs to be replaced, as well as the sound system. So one day I will send this out to probably, I can't remember if it's Hennings with an N or Hemmings with an M, but Hemmings Trains, they're the guys that do the Super Chuffer, and they do really great things with these models. So I'm going to send it out to them eventually and let them fix it up and make it really nice. But for now, I'm going to show you the Queer One in action, all broken down. So enjoy! Oops. grade there and it can't climb it. If I go much faster than this, it's going to start to race. And then it'll slow back down, and then it'll race. Oh, there it goes. Alright, well I'm just going to let that go off into the sunset, and let's see if I can get back in focus here. Here we go. See if I can get it back up here, and then I'll shut it off. Here it comes. Crash landing. Well, there you go. And that's how an experimental duplex engine should run. So anyway, I will fix this up. I just wanted to show you this engine. I don't run it like this all the time. I can't imagine it's good for it. And I would imagine that it would eventually derail, crash, break, something like that. I don't abuse my trains like that. But I just wanted to show you that. I thought it was pretty cool to have an experimental engine that runs like the experimental engine actually did. So anyway, next video will be when it's all fixed up and running beautifully. But hope you enjoyed it. I love this piece. This is DJ's O Gauge Trains, and I'll see you next time.